sit in the kitchen at like the shitty table, so I'm not used to all like the nice stuff over here.
Yeah, all like the lighting and all that fun jazz.
Yeah, I just get up from the table with like a broken back after like emailing a bunch of people back. So this is nice to have like the standing desk set up and all the fancy stuff.
I do like the standing desk. It's a nice change of pace for certain types of work. Like I like the standing desk for most work, but if I actually have to read or think, I need to sit down. I can't be standing when I'm trying to do that.
Yeah, no shot.
Just doesn't work.
I don't know how people do the walking desk. I think you could take like a phone call, but that
you're just lying
impossible
to yourself.
Yeah.
If you think that you're productive on a walking desk, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, no shot.
Those are the people that think they're good at multitasking. When there's no human on the planet that's actually good at multitasking. It's a huge myth.
Yeah, and then you have to go back and correct everything that you were doing on the walk.
Yeah.
Well, people actually try to work while they're walking. I thought you just like you know how most people have jobs where they don't actually work. You know what I mean? Like that's what I thought the walking desk is for. It's like I got to stand in front of this computer in case someone emails me. So let me walk while I'm doing that.
Yeah, but at least they're fit while they're potentially working.
Well, that made a lot of sense to me. I didn't think they were actually like trying to do stuff.
Yeah, dude,
I don't even have a real job. I don't even have a fake job. Like, so I don't know anything about this. I don't do anything.
Yeah, dude, you go walk into the library up at University of Utah and they've got those walking desks out. You see people out like trying to work or study on those things. I'm like, you guys are...
That's wild.
I would compare that to an undergrad. Mondays were our off day in season and we would go to Lake Campus and we would all bring our book bags and things with all the work that we needed to get done that we were behind on. Not once did we ever open a book bag, but we felt really good about the effort. Like since we brought it, it was like high five, guys. We brought our work.
Just in case.
It's kind of like maybe the guy who made the Bosu ball like also made the walking desk or something for work. It's kind of the same concept, right? It's like let me do multiple things poorly.
Was that wet? You can probably use the salt and pepper shakers while you're on there too.
Yeah.
The shake weights. That's really what I want to see. I want to see someone on a walking desk, like double shake weights going as they're going.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they just have like an intern who like turns the page for them on the book that they're reading.
Dude, it's crushing life.
Absolutely. Nice. Okay. So I'll apologize in advance to people listening if you hear some tissues or coughing going in the background. Got a little bug. Ryan's suffering from allergies.
This year I have allergies. I feel like this time of the year I'm always telling people I have a cold. Most years, but this time I'm telling people I have allergies.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that play. But what we're going to talk about today is getting overhead. In particular, should you be going overhead? Kind of what are some of the qualifications for yes or no? And then what are some strategies and tactics that we can actually use to get you overhead and to improve that range of motion? Since as we're going to get into, I would be willing to bet 99% of the people listening to this podcast don't have it available to them passively. And guess what? You're just not going to magically get it when you go under load, right? So as a kind of a primer on this, and also apologies if I sound super nasally, you're just going to have to deal with it. So, right, a lot of people want to go overhead. Not entirely sure like why, but like if getting overhead is something that you really want to do, and like there's obviously some benefits that can come from different things there, but I'll let you guys chime in here after me. But I will say that I have never tested someone on a table that had clean shoulder flexion when we started working together on day one. Pretty much every single person that I have ever tested is lucky if their arm gets like past the front of their nose, because when you're testing that shoulder flexion, you have to make sure you actually pin the rib cage. And that's where most people go wrong, is they just like test shoulder flexion, just let the ribs do whatever they want. But that's fake shoulder flexion, right? So if I actually pin your ribs, because remember, we're always chasing this kind of ribs down, pelvis under stacked position. If I actually pin your ribs and don't let your ribs like just pop out and externally rotate, that's going to be a true test of what your shoulder flexion looks like. And the vast majority of people out there just frankly don't have it. And so that's when we run into the issues of, it's kind of a convex curve phenomenon where, and I'm not going to pick on, I don't want to just pick on CrossFit, but you see it in CrossFit more than other training options and modalities. It's this convex curve of like, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. My shoulder kind of hurts. Oh, now it really hurts. Oh, fuck, this sucks. Right? Because it's like an acute dosage of something like that won't really be a problem. Like if you're going overhead, even though you don't have that as an option, like you can get away with it in short, acute exposures, but you're going to really suffer with repeated exposure over time. So I'll let you guys just chip in here on kind of your experiences. Does it match up with essentially what I'm seeing and saying? Keiran, let's go you first. We'll just kind of like go around how the videos show up here on the screen. So we'll go Keiran, we'll go Ryan Patrick, and then we'll go Ryan LaCure.
Yeah. So I'm not as good with the table testing as like some of you guys, obviously. But we'll just even put the, like, you know, say we have like somebody walking in day one and, or like, you know, I don't know why, but like a ton of the high school kids are like kind of in to like some of the CrossFit-y stuff. Like they all want to get a kipping pull up down and like all the handstand stuff. So like they want to do it in the structured workouts. So like just to like show people, like you said, we'll just like do the lie in the back, you know, have them do it once and just see what happens. Always the ribs are flaring. And, you know, we talk about, all right, let's like, I'm just going to keep my hand here. And like, as soon as you feel your rib, like come up into my hand, stop wherever you're at. And they just see the disparity between like, you know, the workaround where they just kind of like arch and get a lot of low back extension versus like really isolating the shoulder and being like, so that's why we're going to like hold off on all the direct overhead stuff. Just until, you know, maybe we'll close up that space. Maybe we won't, I don't know. But for right now, we'll kind of stick to some, you know, potentially cleaner options for you, right, in the meantime. But that's just kind of like, to your point, day one, a lot of people have acute strategies that might not necessarily lead to long-term health or performance. So we just try to like really make that clear from day one with those guys.
Yeah, one thing I'll just chime in on there really quick before we go to you, I'm just going to call you RP, is that, right, like the human body is not going to shut you down because you're going to try to do something biomechanically inefficient or not correct, right? Like you're not going to go do a movement. The body's like, nope, not allowed. We're not going to let you do this, right? Like it's going to figure out a way to accomplish the task that you're telling it to do. Whether or not it's doing it well is a totally different conversation.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. There's always that workaround, right? And
yeah, people are phenomenal compensators, right? Like some of the best athletes in the world are really just the best compensators on the planet. And for whatever reason, they've been blessed with phenomenal genetics. They have fucking horse tendons and ligaments, and you see them do things and you're like, I don't know how you're not hurt, but great. Like kudos to you. High five. It doesn't mean that's how I'm going to go about approaching the rest of the population because you're on the far end of a bell curve. Right. But all right, let's rotate down. Ryan Patrick, see where you're at with this.
Yeah. I mean, I'll echo what you're saying about the table test. So, you know, when we test shoulder flexion, we do the one that has a little bit of an external rotation bias. So the operculum of the elbow is going to face down towards the feet at all times. And you'll see, I mean, most of the people I test, once they pass 90, they're going to start to spin out just a little bit. So, I mean, James, I don't even know if I've tested somebody that's got 120 degrees clean, at least not the people I'm seeing, because
yeah,
I mean, our people, they want to come in, they want to train hard, and you can't really do that with overhead under most circumstances, right? Because they just don't have the range. Sure, I'll throw in a 2 kettlebell press and a Metcon here or there, but it's not going to be a huge part of their training, at least not early on. And so, I mean, I might be the anomaly here, but under most conditions, I don't really chase overhead pressing because I think some of the things they have to give up to get there are just, you know, it kind of takes away from what their true objective is. But I mean, the people that we've had to go about it, maybe they've got some neck issues, shoulder issues, that biceps tendon starts flaring up. I'm a huge fan of the landmine press. We use it a variety of postures where I think people can stack a little bit better. We've really started using a lot of seated landmine press just because it's a passive tilt. Because I still get a lot of people that just like mash their glutes or try to tense everything too much. So the seated landmine has been a slam dunk for us. But from there, I mean, if I'm going to approach it sequentially, I need somebody to be able to clean up their ERs and IRs at 90 degrees before I even try getting that additional shoulder flexion. So, for us, that means getting that pump handle of the chest to move back up, which again, back to the original conversation of creating a stack or putting the pelvis and the rib cage on top of one another. Like you have to be able to get a full exhale so that the diaphragm will actually ascend and you can get that rib cage to kind of pop open. So, we do some other things like for our super compressed people, especially the wide infrasternal angles, we'll do some side lying stuff, whether it looks like your rolling arm bars, your Turkish get ups, even just like a side lying cable row, just to try to increase those dimensions of the rib cage A to P. So it's simple stuff like that I think's passive, doesn't really require a lot of extra work from them because I mean, I'll be honest, nobody really wants to work on that shit. And we talked about getting that one client of mine ready for the TSC. Like the warm up is walking to the rack and starting to do some stuff. So, as much as possible, I'm trying to bake it in and just keep them at least at a level that's not going to create any negative influences, not going to destroy their shoulders. Still let them chase the big three. But I don't work with a lot of overhead athletes. I mean, we did strongman for a short period of time, but even that's just a unsupported incline press, if we're being honest. And, but I mean, maybe Ryan LeCure can kind of weigh in on somebody who's looking for, to blow their shoulders up from a muscular standpoint. But I mean, that's not really my realm.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just two things here real quick before we we need to come up with like nicknames here because
you can just call me LeCure or Liquor, as kids call me.
Okay. I was thinking more like Meat Daddy, but
that's even better. We can go with them both, Liquor Meat Daddy.
So two things here. One, so we talked about why the ribs are so important. And I think a really easy way to think about this for people is if we're talking about getting overhead, we need to see really good scapulohumeral rhythm, right? Like you have this humeral head sitting on a golf tee, like the golf ball on the golf tee. You have very little room for error. And the scapula is just a free floating bone just hanging out. It needs some reference. It needs something to work off of. And that's the ribs. The ribs for the shoulder blade are like the floor for your feet. So if you take the floor away because your ribs drive forward and externally rotate, there's no chance in the world you're actually getting a scapula to move and upwardly rotate and do the things that we want it to do well. And that leads to one of two things, right? The two biggest ones that we see are anterior impingement on the long head of the bicep. By far the most popular. It's the, hey, this hurts right here. Or you'll get the people who are on the backside posterior, you get more like a cuff impingement. But one question follow-up for RP here is, can you unpack why you like to test shoulder flexion and external rotation? Because like that comes across as even more of a limiter because like I don't even get to 90 degrees if you text me in like external rotation, olecranon forward. Maybe unpack why that is and why you're seeing like that internal rotation as a point of being, okay, like this is like a shutdown point essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a study out there. I'll have to pull it and send it over to you. Maybe you can drop it in the show notes or something. And I may not grasp the essence of this fully, but basically the positions that we're testing in, we're looking at, if you take your shoulder and just make the biggest circle you can, we're looking at transition points. So, if you use, I think the propulsion arc is what most people reference in terms of how Bill's talking about it. There is, 0 to 60 is going to be this external rotation bias based on the mechanics of the scapula. As you kind of pass this middle zone, so from 60 degrees of shoulder or hip flexion up to about 120, you need to have some internal rotation available. And if you don't have enough total space in terms of bandwidth between ER and IR, you're going to find that guys will start to internally rotate a lot early. So kind of back to your point is, the starting position is suboptimal. The mechanics, maybe the rib cage is completely pushed forward. You've got the winging scapula right out of the gate. You're going to have to start to get some of the upward rotation and chew up some of that space as you actually need it in that zone. And so either you get the elbow turning out to the side, or you kind of end up, doing more of the YMCA position than actually staying in that true line of shoulder flexion. So it pulls out the deviations in movement a lot quicker. And when I actually watch people lift, it seems to be more accurate with how they're actually going to present when they're lifting.
Okay, beautiful. No, that's super helpful. Thank you. All right, Meat Daddy, let's get your thoughts here on getting people overhead. And I think it'd be really intriguing to hear from more of a hypertrophy, like local muscular standpoint. Like, is it something that you need to have access to in order to drive hypertrophy in specific places? I'll let you just kind of unpack that however you really want to.
Yeah, I mean, I would say anecdotally, it's pretty clear that you don't need it. Because ain't nobody got it, but I've seen some big ass delts on the bodybuilding stage. So a lot of those guys, I think, kind of figured out that they can overhead press, or they think they're overhead pressing and they're not. They're just doing an incline press, right? Like so, and it still seems to work. So I don't know. I don't think you absolutely need it. I don't like to have like the lowest. I just think from my bias is just from a health perspective, like I want people to be able to do this stuff as long as possible. And I think if I have someone that comes in is like has fucking 90 degrees of shoulder flexion, I'm like, all right, we got to try to do something about this. But I've never taken anyone who had like no shoulder flexion to having like full shoulder flexion. I think like the only way that I could do that is to actually tear something out of their shoulder, like with a lot of these people, right? Like it's like I don't know, like maybe I'm not that good at my job. Like I've never seen that really happen. Like I mean, it sounds like that's what you guys are finding as well. It's like we can do a lot of stuff for these people to help them get better, but like Ryan Patrick was saying, like they don't want it. Like maybe we could get them to do it, but do they really want to do that? Like, are they actually going to take the time to do that? And what are they going to have to give up? And just from the time perspective, that's enough for me to be like, I'm not going to pursue that. Like, because for hypertrophy, like I can definitely get it. I can definitely get the look that we're going for with, the landmine presses is typically where I start people with, especially if there's somebody who, cause sometimes, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but like, I'll see people that can make it look like they have full shoulder flexion. And it almost like, and they don't even really move the rib cage much, but it's like they're moving only through the glenohumeral joint, and there's like no scapular upper rotation, which with James, you were starting to kind of get out there. So that's something where I really like the landmine presses for, because they'll be able to feel that upward rotation taking place, their scaps, or they'll like do overhead stuff, but like their shoulders don't move, like there's no elevation. So things like that are really useful, like the landmine pressing, and even like if you have one of those hammer strength high to low rows, like those are awesome. Or you can still set that up on a cable where you can angle it however you like. It can be as much of an angle as you need. And then as far as like pressing stuff goes, like I pretty much basically everyone stops at this feet on the wall overhead press with the angle is like 110 degrees ish, unless my geometry is completely incorrect there. Like I think that's because this would be 180. I always have to think about that whenever I say it, because I want to make sure I don't say 70 degrees, and they're just like, God, this is so uncomfortable. I do this. He's saying on the podcast, this is supposed to be the easy version. So yeah, like not fully 90 degrees back a little bit. That's a right angle for those bodybuilders on the podcast here. So yeah, like you're gonna want to be a little bit away from that, and then you don't have to go to a full shoulder flexion. And that seems to be enough for like getting a delt pump and getting delts to grow, along with things like scap raises and lateral raises and all of those variations. So yeah, I don't think it's not something I want to completely ignore. Like if I see that, it's like, okay, I know where I'm going with the warm up. You know, like I need there to be some encouragement of this up pump handle mechanic, and like I just looking at them, like I'm gonna try to do some things to just push them in, like because a lot of these people are going to be really wide. So that's kind of where it guides me. I'm not going to ignore it completely, but I'm certainly not going to attack it like crazy. And luckily, I think a lot of the exercises that help with it, like things like the like a hook line pullover variations like that, also feel awesome. Like so they'll get a lot of what they're going for anyway. Like I'm definitely going to get a lot of lats with that, and it's going to feel really good. And then I can help whatever range of motion they have, even if that's like nothing. It's still gonna work, especially if I use like a cable kind of setup or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's at with it.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement there, because it's like I still have not to date taken someone who, right, is missing shoulder flexion and then gotten them to where it's like, oh, we're perfectly clean now. It's kind of like you can never make a slow person fast, but I can make people faster. I can improve your shoulder flexion. I can improve what that looks like. But at the same time, like, we don't train Olympic weightlifters who need to jerk. And we also don't train CrossFitters who need to do absurd amounts of overhead things. And I think that, right, that population is going to be self-selected into anyways for people that actually have that available to them. Right. But yeah. And so I think for people listening to this, if they're like, well, I really would like to improve and get my overhead better, a couple of questions to consider is like, what is your actual goal? What do you actually want to accomplish? Because we have a lot of tools in our toolbox that can get you unbelievable results that don't require us to try to get you doing really high risk overhead movements, right? Like I want to be married to the outcome, not like the implement we're using to get you the outcome, right? It's a whole argument with like, you don't need to squat with a straight bar on your back unless you want to step on a platform. If you want to step on a platform, then yeah, we got to, like, that's the game, right? That is your sport. If you just want to be strong and jacked, who the fuck cares if you put a straight bar on your back? Use an SSB bar, use a spider bar, use a front squat, use a hack squat. And so I think this comes back to that whole concept of people just get married to things for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But for people listening who are like, yeah, I do have the shoulder pain, like what can I do to kind of help with this whole process? One, I would stop doing all overhead movement right off the bat, like take it out immediately. Two is you're going to need some input and coaching so that you can actually feel a shoulder blade moving on ribs. Because that's another one that you mentioned, which is you see the glenoid move or see the humerus move in the glenoid, but there's no scapular movement with it, right? Because they were probably coached or cued at one point in time to pin a shoulder blade and then like do a row or do a this. When it's like, no. Like that shoulder blade needs to be free to move. That's what we want to see, right? So the first thing is to start actually being cognizant of and choosing exercises that allow you to work on feeling a shoulder blade move on stable ribs. Like a seated one-arm cable row, a half kneeling one-arm lat pull down, things of that nature, where we can slow the tempo down and actually get you like feeling a shoulder blade moving on ribs, right? Because even on a horizontal row, most people suck at doing horizontal rows, right? Like a big mistake in the horizontal row realm is like once your shoulder blade stops, you're done, right? Because like you'll see people where it's like, okay, I row and then like my shoulder blade is like literally cannot move any further. So all that's happening at this point, if I continue to row, is I'm just getting this like anterior glide, anterior roll. I'm just going to start pissing off the long head of the bicep, right? And then I think the pullover variations are awesome. Like lay you on a floor in a 3-month position or hook lying position, get you feeling what overhead motion feels like with ribs being where we want them because you have the floor as a feedback. I love the short seated and half kneeling lat pull down variations, giving you like an exaggerated eccentric, because I think that exaggerated eccentric is a great place for you to actually feel that upward rotation happening. Like yoga push-ups back from like the days of CrossFit Performance, like we yoga push up people to death. They work. They can be a really good option. But those are kind of some of the places where I go when I'm thinking, because yeah, like I do want to work on it with people. Like I want to see the fact that your shoulder blade can move. Because if your shoulder blade's not moving, like we don't have something going on here, then like you're just playing with fire and it's eventually going to catch up to you. So just from a longevity health training standpoint, like I want to improve it to some degree. Didn't know if you guys have any other like strategies, exercises, movements, ways to approach this that you like in terms of trying to like reclaim, because I think it's really more about just reclaiming the ability of a shoulder blade to move on ribs more than anything. Like I don't really care about trying to get you complete full shoulder flexion. I just don't know if it's realistic. But I do care about getting your shoulder blade moving on your ribs again, because once you get that, it's like, oh, okay, here we go. Right. And now I can train at higher volumes. I can drive more adaptation. Like that's why we care so much about movement. Like movement for movement's sake is kind of stupid. Like I want you to feel good so we can train at higher volumes and get you more of a training effect. But yeah, we can go. Let's go opposite order this time. We'll go meet daddy back.
Yeah, I hope that sticks. I really do.
You're gonna get a T-shirt in the mail.
Yeah, I'd be so happy. That'd be fantastic.
Sounds like this is turning into a different podcast.
Yeah, well, tune in in about an hour. That's my other podcast starts. But
you're welcome. That could be your
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans account.
Yeah, yeah. Hit me up. Meet Daddy at OnlyFans.com. Yeah, I only have one fan. It's my mom. So that all sounds like a really good summary to me. Like that is basically how I would approach it. It's just like starting with the first podcast. Like I'm sure you did this intentionally. Like that, it makes sense that we started there. Like we have to understand that dynamic of the stack first, and then start getting some movement of the shoulder blade around that stack. I think that sets you up for overhead. And I would imagine that most people completely skip that step. Well, completely skip both of those steps. And we see them all the time. They just go straight to overhead. And I think that, I wonder, and I'm curious what you guys think, like, why does it get so damn bad? Like, why can't we do this overhead stuff? Like, why is this such an issue? And I wonder if a lot of it is from how we're taught to train in the beginning. And then we kind of get these morphological changes that take place that are really hard to undo. And it just really presents itself in the shoulder for some reason. I don't know. Because I know that I was taught, like, pin everything down and back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, my scaps didn't move for like 10 fucking years. So, I mean, yeah, forget about a posterior tilted anything. Like, that just didn't happen for a really long time. So I wonder if part of that's just like, you just start to see structural changes because of that.
Bro, I couldn't wipe my ass with my left hand. Like literally, I was so extended. I had zero rotation, and I played baseball in college. Let's keep this in mind.
Wow.
I literally, for like over 5 years, could not wipe my ass with my left hand because it couldn't get there.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, so you just got to get a bidet. Like we're here to solve problems.
That's true.
That's
very true.
Bidet. Yeah. I'm fortunately not that bad. Like I'm a lot better than people would expect. What's that?
I'm going to clear the air. That's not a problem anymore. That's been fixed.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm sure Kelsey appreciates that because at some point someone's going to have to take care of that. So if that persisted. So yeah, I think I don't know. Now I should just move forward because we started talking about wiping asses. I think we just move on to the next person because this is only going to go downhill for me. I forgot what we were talking about completely. So now we're talking about shoulders, but now I'm just thinking of Carson and his technique and like all about Carson's technique, right? Like he swears by the forward back, which is insane. And this is a guy who's got all the shoulder mobility on the planet, but so now that's the only thing that's in my head. So why don't we move forward to somebody else so I can regain my adult self.
So one thing I'll chip in on that super quick in terms of like what we're told to do growing up. Because I was the same way. Like, everything was cued to be pinned.
That's what it was, yeah.
Right. And then you're also taught like, okay, well, you need to have air quote good posture. Like stand tall, shoulders back, like this military posture. I was like, okay, well, for starters, there is no such thing as good posture, right? Like good posture is just dynamic. Anything that doesn't change over a period of time is bad posture. So everybody who's like standing desk on your high horse, like you stand for 8 hours, probably as bad for you as sitting, just saying. But yeah, in total agreement. It's funny. I remember when I got out of college, started running into shoulder issues because my shoulder blade just didn't move. I was in Boston, went to Cressy Performance. This was before I interned there. I went there, got an assessment, went through like a walkthrough with Greg Robbins. And I remember Greg trying to coach me on a 1-arm cable row. And he's like over there like, bro, your shoulder blade just, it doesn't move. Like we had to spend so long on this thing, like him just like getting in there, like grabbing it, like moving it around. He's like, do you feel this? Do you like, this is what we're looking for here? I'm like, what do you mean? Like this is, but yeah.
Yeah. Seen that plenty of times. Yeah. So I guess that was my question before we started talking about wiping asses. Like, what do you think is contributing to this being so difficult for everybody? Do you think it would change because you guys work with kids? I'm not allowed around children. So what do you guys think about being able to like instill this stuff at a young age? Do you think that would make a difference, or you think we're just kind of fucked just environmentally and societally, if that's a word?
I'll chime in on that first. I think that if you instill it from an early age, I bet you'll keep it. I think you like,
why not? I mean, you had it at one point, right? So
yeah, it existed at one point and then you stopped doing it. And then over time we have changes that take place. Like at the same time, I don't know, like as a species, are we really built to do things with our arms over our head, like mechanically? Like if you think evolutionarily, like what would we have been doing with our arms over our head?
Eating fruits and vegetables.
On a consistent basis. Yeah. Like I'm reaching up to grab stuff. Like maybe I'm climbing, right? So like, yeah, I guess like the climbing and some of that stuff could come into that conversation. But yeah, like I bet that if people kept doing it, like if you had a kid at an early age, who you got overhead exposure to, you taught these things early on, you kept giving them that input over time, like there's no reason that they would just magically lose it. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, you see like the like a lot of the gymnasts, right? When they're little, they could do whatever they want and they're, animals. But as they like get older, get into like working and all that stuff, right? Like not using it as often, like everything's like down. I don't know how texting, whatever. I don't know how much that plays, but like it is interesting, right? As they get older, they definitely lose that ability, which they crushed as kids or teenagers, right? It's gone pretty quickly once they stop. So
Yeah, I think they said too much too. But I mean, if you look at like the old school, like all the stuff we did in PE, I mean, we climbed ropes, you did the flexed arm hang, bear crawled, crab walked. I mean, your shoulder was in so many different positions and doing so many different activities. I mean, they don't even do half of those things anymore.
Nope.
yeah.
So, but I mean, as far as like
play video games, they living right here or right here.
As far as this might be an oversimplification, but as far as the people that we work with who do love to train, it's, I think that the stronger you get, the more muscle you accumulate, the more force you have to put into the bar. I mean, your body adapts to not moving under load and just carries those adaptations beyond the session to where, I'm just prepared at any time to move something heavy. And, I don't want a ton of degrees of freedom at my shoulder when I'm trying to put something over my head.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally agreed. Any other thoughts on this topic? I feel like we've done a pretty good job on this. It's hard on a podcast because I think there's a decent bit of visuals that would come into this. Obviously, like getting with us on the training team or when we do our training camps so we can actually coach and work on this in person will make a big difference for people.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Well, maybe two. What do you guys think about passive? All right, so two questions. So like a well done passive shoulder flexion, kind of thinking like a lat hang, kind of posterior mediastonic expansion kind of thing. Do you guys do that with someone who doesn't have that range of motion, or you allow them to get into it with that position? That's the first question. What do you guys think about that?
I'll lat hang them.
And so why is that different?
Obviously, if it's in person, it depends. So if it's in person, I can see it. But at the same time, like if I'm lat hanging this person, they're not actually truly here. Sorry, they're not actually truly like here. They're probably a little bit more here because I'm cueing like ribs down, staying tall with a tuck. And it's like if they get there, I'm like, I'm happy with this. And then I see that A to P expansion. Like I see they're getting posterior mediastinum to fill with air. I'm like, okay, I can live with this. I'm pretty happy with this. Other people I've given it to, and it's like, this is the train wreck. We are not going to do this because it's a terrible option for you.
Yeah. A lot
You can see
easier
the shoulder
to
blades like
person.
crunched together.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of your Keiran. You got anything with that?
No, I mean, to your point though, right? Like it's funny, like I'm a lot more comfortable even if they fuck it up, right? You're just like, yeah, whatever. Like they do feel a little bit of a stretch, but like it's interesting, right? Like you're cool with that stuff, but not necessarily like driving force through that.
So Ryan Patrick, you're looking at, are they actually upwardly rotating their scapula at an appropriate amount, and they're getting some posterior expansion, still maintaining like the pump handle and all of that. That's kind of your criteria, because it seems like they can get more range when they're passive.
For sure. I think part of it is the grip they use. So I'm not going to put them in like a pull-up grip where they're double overhand. I'll probably find some neutral handles just to open it up a little bit. And then to James's point, is they're going to kind of shift the thorax back instead of just hanging vertically. So I mean, the main things are, can they create some space between the scaps and actually pop that open with their breath, which comes to, can they get that good exhale first and maintain some ab tension before the subsequent inhale? And then I want to make sure they're not shrugging too much either, because that's not an ideal strategy either. It's just letting it yank up till they're, they don't have a neck. But they've got some, I usually put their feet, up on something. So they've got a little bit support. So it's not even their, it's maybe half their body weight.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool.
I actually think the angle, when I think about myself or people I have do it, I think the angle is pretty similar to like a feet to wall shoulder press. I think like the shoulder angle, the degree of shoulder flexion is like really, really similar. Cause like Ryan said, they're not actually true here, like true 180 degree shoulder flexion. They're probably more like in this range, like arm to like front of the nose, maybe back a little bit, because we are like getting more of that posterior movement in the thorax.
Yeah, it's funny when you like set people up in it. Go ahead, Keiran. Go
for it.
Was that Keiran or Ryan? I didn't know I was talking. I feel like Kieran's mouth moved, but Ryan made noise. That was cool. I don't know how you guys did that.
Oh, that worked. We've been working on that actually.
That sounds sick. That was some like technologically advanced shit right there. So whoever was going to talk and whoever wants to move their mouth is cool.
I'll jump in. So one of the things I don't think we really talked about, but I know we're probably on the same page with this, is, when it comes to doing anything overhead, even the unilateral or the pulling stuff, is I tend to move away from a lot of the bilateral stuff and do it all one-sided. So it's not like we're going to jump into a barbell. It's not like we're going to jump into pull-ups right away, because there is especially with the pulling, that's the first place I'm going to go when I get somebody overhead, just because there's a little bit of, traction on the joint, instead of just compressing everything together. That may not be in an ideal position. But even with that, they have to be able to manage the contraction of the lats with the core on the front side, because they're very powerful extensors. But at least if you do it unilaterally, they've got a better shot, and it might drive a little rotation through the trunk, which I think can help them restore some of the mechanics. But, that's usually my first go-to, along with a lot of the other stuff you said, James. And then, for my Gen Pop people, most of them still need some work on push-ups. So, we do a lot of tempo push-ups. I think the tempo allows them to feel like they're training really hard, but it lets me put them on an incline without a fight. And then, we'll do 6, 8, 10 sets at a time and really work on the relationship between, how the thorax is moving up and down in their scap position. And first couple of weeks, they're going to lose the top every time, 9 times out of 10. So, those are some simple starting points for people listening that I think can really go a long way. And even if you don't have problems now, I think unilateral work is just a slam dunk. Save the bilateral stuff for your squats, your bench, your deadlift. Everything else, at least in my programs, are typically unilateral, because I'm just trying to allocate as much volume as I can to those things. And, I don't want to chew it up on overhead and, start running into more problems.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's, I think, a really important point, is that the vast majority of, if you want to call it like an upper pull, the vast majority that I prescribe on an upper pull is going to be unilateral. Because it is easier to control, it's easier to manage, it's easier to get that shoulder blade moving when you're not trying to deal with two lats that are attempting to drive you into this like big gross extension pattern, if we want to call it that. But then at the same time, it's like we'll still get like a lat pull down. You'll still get like a chest supported row every now and then. It's just, I don't know the numbers. I'd probably say like 70 to 80% of the pulling variations I write for people are going to be unilateral. And then 20 to 30 is going to be more like really selectively chosen bilateral pull variations, as long as they've like shown that they can actually control it. Did you have another question, Meat Daddy?
Yeah. So if we're cool with that, then like where does what about like this like shoulder traction kind of stuff and like the band stretches and all that kind of, you guys know what I'm talking about? Like this one where like you got the band like this and you're just, like, doing that whole thing. Like where does that fall in?
I haven't spent enough time.
Does anyone do that shit ananymore? I don't know. Like I feel like it's something maybe
no,
that's
you're talking about like
ago.
Kelly Starrett back in the day.
Yeah,
like
do people still do that?
Leopard.
See, I'm like the oldest 29-year-old person on the planet. Like, so I don't know if people still do that stuff. Brian Patrick's just out. He's like, I'm not having this conversation.
You really pissed him off with that.
I've got other things to do. So yeah, like I just want to like,
dare you?
I just want to just like present that like because that's a passive shoulder stretch, right? Like that's a different thing than what we're talking about, and it doesn't have the prerequisites of the thorax being in a good position, the shoulder blades moving the way that they should, and getting expansion in the right places. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of passive stretching anyways. I just
general, right? Yeah.
Like in general, I just don't think passive stretching works. Like I'm not adding sarcomeres in series. I'm not, right? Like it just comes back to managing tone to a muscle, which then dictates how you can express range of motion. Like I came up in the, oh, you have tight hamstrings, let's stretch those suckers. Like I got stretched day, night. It's just a terrible strategy. Like stretching doesn't work. All it's going to do is essentially create some laxity, air quotes, right? Like it's going to create some looseness someplace we probably don't want it, right? That was like everybody that was sleeper stretching for so long. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Great idea. People still do that shit. It blows my mind. Like that whole, like, you guys
that's why I bring it up,
Ramwad?
because I still think it's out there. Yeah.
Oh, it's 100% still out there. You guys have heard of Ramwad? Like I know, like they have so many people on their thing. I'll watch people do that and I'm like, holy Christ, what are you people doing? This is so stupid. Like you're sleeper stretching, you're doing all this stuff. I'm like, awesome, dude. Yeah, let's just get a pathology in the posterior shoulder. I think just keep doing what you're doing, because then you're probably going to come spend money on us at some point in the future. Yeah, I mean, I think stretching could be an entire podcast in and of itself. That'd be a really good one to get Lance on for too, actually. I think he could jam on that better than the four of us can. But yeah, just as a general rule of thumb, like I don't stretch anybody because I think it's a losing strategy, right? Like,
I definitely don't fuck with the bands. I mean,
no.
I don't need people torquing themselves into more position. I know that a lot of people are kind of poo-poo on it. I'll still have people use the foam roller, at least if I can get a short-term input that can change tissue stiffness and then layer some other activities into it. I mean, clients, they still seem to like it. They feel loose after, and it's just one of those battles I'm not going to fight for the integrity of science, of whether the foam roller is doing exactly what it's prescribed to do or not. But I know it results in some quick changes that, as long as we support it with other activities and then the right kind of strength training, which I think of as just cement down the range you've got, things seem to shake a little bit better. But the straight up stretching, I mean, I've done like a hang off like lean back from the bar and do a lat stretch and then try to drive some air to that open side, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah.
The only two like stretches, air quotes, that I will ever do is the one that you just mentioned, which is like hanging back off of like a post or bar. But then for me, it's like drop your opposite rib cage, rotate a little bit, and I want to see if you can. I want to see if you can fill that. Like, can you fill that half of your thorax with air?
Yep.
So that for me is more of a respiration drill. The only like stretchy thing I'll do is pretty much everyone I work with gets a modified version of a couch stretch. Right.
Is
but
that
for
like
me,
a step over stretch thing, like the hands?
No,
and knees
so that's the step over. That's the one where like your foot's up on a bench.
So like a rectus femoris kind of stretch?
Yeah. So think kind of like the bottom of a Bulgarian split squat with that rear knee on the ground. But I'll put a small foam roller between the heel and the ass. And it's like, okay, you're going to hit 30 hamstring contractions here. Right.
And you're also working on tucking while you're in that position.
It's like,
and stuff too.
we're getting a tuck, we're getting position, stay tall through the top of your head. Okay, cool. Fire your hamstring. Right. And it's like, we're going to decrease quad tone that way. But it's like, I just don't think there's really any support in the literature unless you start like hanging weights off chicken wings for fucking like 8 hours at a time.
Yeah. Another one of the, what you got?
No, I already did that like 6 times. Go ahead.
Another one of the, like the static stretches that I actually kind of like for a lot of gen pop, and they like it. So we'll leave it in there. You know, like the fascial, like all the trains or whatever, like the lateral line stretch, only because to your point, right? Like you're kind of naturally closing off one side so you can get like a good and really open up and drive air through that way. So that's where kind of nicely, and plus nobody actually goes like fully overhead with it. You're always kind of on a incline angle anyway. That's another nice one that regular trainees like tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah, because what you're really doing is just you're driving a left zone of apposition to see if they can get right apical expansion.
Yeah.
Right. And again, like it almost always thorax stuff comes back to airflow to a certain degree. That's a lot of what we're trying to do.
You're creating context for other drills in the future and stuff too. That makes a lot of sense to me. That's time well used. Like even if, like, I don't think I'm gonna like blow somebody's shoulder out by like having to do like some band stretches or something. But it's like I just don't think I'm doing anything at all for anything. It's just like, all right, well, we just did that for 5 minutes. Now we got to like actually do something that does something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of, cause that to me, like there is a cost. Like if there's a time component to this thing, then there is a cost. And that is important to me. Like, I don't want to be like wasting a ton of time because like, you know, we're going to do so many bicep curls in that program anyway, that like, I mean, we gotta justify like every minute that we're spending on that stuff. So.
I love it. We can end on that. We're not going to stretch because we need more time to do bicep curls.
Absolutely. That summarizes this perfectly.
Boom. That summarizes this entire episode.
This entire company. We're
going to end it on that. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you guys have an amazing week. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, please feel free to hit us up. Instagram, come to the website, contact us. We understand this is like a big topic. We've unpacked probably the tip of the iceberg, if you will, in this, but I know it's something a lot of people have questions on. So if you have more questions, if you want to unpack this further, just shoot us a DM, shoot us an email. We'd love to kind of like chat with you more on this stuff. Otherwise, have an amazing week, and we'll be back soon.